Hey everyone, before we jump into today's episode, I just wanted to take a moment to thank all of you. Thank you all for your patience. This episode was originally scheduled to come out on June the 22nd, but between me changing jobs, moving to a new city, and getting settled into a new home and a new studio, life got a little ahead of me. What I really wanted to say is thank you. Thank you for the messages, the phone calls, the check ins, and for continuing to support. Never have I had the urge while I got everything back in place. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. All right, we're back. Let's get into this.
Let's just listen to you.
Hey everyone, I have a question for you. How many of you remember your childhood? I mean, really remember it. How far back can you go? Can you remember your first day of school? Can you remember the neighborhood you grew up in? Can you remember making friends on the playground in kindergarten? Or maybe your friendships didn't really begin until the first or second grade. Maybe it was that kid that sat on the bus next to you. Maybe it was one of the kids from down the street or up the block. Think about that person for a moment. Where are they today? Do you still know them? Do you still talk to them? Are they still your friend? Do they still remember you the way you remember them? Or have they become just another memory from a different chapter in your life? Hey everyone, welcome back to Never Have I Had the Urge. I'm Victor Jimenez, and today I want to talk to you about friendship. Or maybe more specifically, why some friendships last a lifetime, why others fade away, and why making friends seems so much easier when we were children than it does today as adults. This is Never Have I Had the Urge to be Unfriendly. When you were a kid, making friends was easy. At least it was for me. You could take just about any 5 or 6-year-old child, drop them off at a playground full of kids they've never met before, and within 10 minutes they're running around together like they've known each other forever. Kids don't ask each other what they do for a living. They don't ask who they voted for. They don't ask how much money they make. They don't ask what religion they practice. One kid simply walks up to another kid and says, "Hey, wanna play?" And just like that, a friendship begins. I remember growing up in New York City. If I walked into a schoolyard carrying my pink Spalding handball, all I'd had to do was walk over to the handball court and yell, "Who's got next?" Within an hour, I knew everybody. We'd play singles, we'd play doubles, we'd argue over whether the ball hit the line, and before the afternoon was over, somebody would say, "Same time tomorrow?" And most of the time we showed up. The same thing happened on the basketball courts. All you needed was a basketball and enough courage to ask if you could run the next game. Nobody cared where you came from. Nobody cared what your background was. If you could play, you played. If you couldn't play, you learned. Either way, you usually walked away with a few new friends. Friendship seemed effortless back then. But somewhere along the way, something changed. Because today, if I walk up to a complete stranger and ask, "Hey, want to be friends?" they're probably going to look at me like I escaped from somewhere. The older we get, the harder friendship seems to become. Maybe it's because we've been hurt. Maybe it's because we've been disappointed. Maybe it's because life has taught us to be more careful about who we let into our lives. Or maybe it's because friendship, like most things worth having, becomes more complicated as we get older. What's interesting, though, is that while friendship may become harder to find, it also becomes more valuable. When we're young, friends help us pass the time. As we get older, friends help us make sense of our time. And that got me thinking, what happened to us? Why was making friends so easy when we were children? And why does it seem so much harder now? That question stayed with me recently while I was having a conversation with someone I consider a very good friend. The interesting thing is, we've never actually met. At least not in person. We live almost 1,400 miles apart. Yet over the last few years, we've developed a friendship that feels warm, familiar, and very real. Sometimes it feels like we've known each other forever. In fact, a conversation with her is what eventually got me thinking about this entire episode. Now, before I go any further, let me tell you how we met. A few years ago, I was living and working in Charlotte, North Carolina. I had a guy working for me named Al. Al was a good guy, hardworking, knowledgeable, a family man, the kind of person you enjoy having on your team. Over time, Al and I became friends on Facebook. Nothing unusual there. We'd occasionally like each other's posts, leave a comment here and there, and keep up with what was happening in each other's lives. Then one day I received a friend request from someone I didn't know. As it turned out, she had known Al and his family for years. Now, if I'm being completely honest, I didn't know a thing about her. But her profile picture was cute enough that I figured, why not? So I accepted the request. At the time, it seemed like a completely insignificant decision. Just another friend request on Facebook. Just another click of a button. But sometimes the smallest decisions end up having the biggest impact on our lives. What started out as a simple Facebook connection slowly evolved into conversation. Conversations turned into phone calls. Phone calls turned into trust. And before either of us realized it, a genuine friendship had formed between two people living almost 1,400 miles apart. It's probably been close to 3 years now. 3 years of text, phone calls, direct messages, funny videos from TikTok and Instagram, and the occasional serious conversations, and a whole lot of laughter. One of the things I love most about my friend is that she has the same warped sense of humor that I have. Sometimes I'll see something online and immediately think, oh, she's going to love this. And before I can send it to her, she's already sent it to me. Now, here's the interesting part. We've never sat across from each other in a restaurant. We've never shared a cup of coffee. We've never spent an afternoon together. And yet, I don't hesitate to call her my friend. Which got me thinking, what exactly makes someone a friend? Is it geography? Is it proximity? Is it spending time together in the same room? Or is it something deeper than that? Maybe friendship isn't about where somebody is. Maybe it's about whether they show up. Because if friendships require people to share the same physical space, then she and I shouldn't be friends at all. And yet, we are. Which leads me to another friendship that Facebook unexpectedly brought back into my life. Not long ago, while talking with my friend from San Antonio, we started discussing how we met and how long we'd known each other. That conversation reminded me of someone else, a childhood friend I hadn't seen or spoken to in decades. We first became friends back in New York City during our junior high school and high school years. Back then, we were good friends, the kind of friends who spent time together almost every day. We knew the same people, hung out in the same places, got into the same trouble. And like a lot of friendships, we simply lost touch. Nobody got angry. Nobody had a falling out. Life just happened. Years turned into decades. And before we knew it, a lot of years had gone by. Then one day, thanks to Facebook, we found each other again. At first, it felt great. It was like opening a time capsule. We started talking, texting, catching up on all the years we'd missed. And for a little while, it felt like no time had passed at all. But then I began noticing something. The friendship wasn't different. We were. Or maybe I should say, I was. My friend loved talking about the good old days, the people we knew, the places we went, the things we did as kids growing up in New York City. And to be fair, those were good memories, some great memories. But after a while, I realized something. I didn't really want to live there anymore. The past helped shape me. The past helped create the person I've become. But I don't live there. Not anymore. And after a few conversations, even my friend noticed it. He told me I had changed. Not in a bad way, just changed. He could hear it in the things I talked about, the questions I asked, the way I looked at life. And honestly, he was right. I have changed. I should have changed. If life teaches us anything, it should teach us that nothing stays the same. Now, don't get me wrong. At the time I started thinking about this episode, I still considered him a friend. I honestly thought I probably always would. When I thought about my childhood, he was part of some wonderful memories. And even though I could tell we had grown in very different directions, I still believed there was room for that friendship in my life. At least that's what I believed then. But reconnecting with him taught me something I wasn't expecting. Sometimes friendships survive, but the people inside those friendships grow in different directions. The friendship remains, the affection remains, the memories remain, but the compatibility doesn't always remain. And I think that's something a lot of us discover as we get older. Just because someone was your best friend at 16 doesn't necessarily mean that he'd be your best friend at 50. That's not a criticism. It's just life. People change, people grow, people evolve. Or sometimes they don't. And that's okay too. For a while we still laughed, we still talked, we still shared stories. But reconnecting with him made me realize maybe friendship isn't measured by how much time we spend together. Maybe it isn't measured by how often we talk. Maybe friendship is measured by something much simpler, whether someone still matters. And if that's true, then what that childhood friendship meant to me still matters. Even if the two boys who once ran the streets of New York City grew up to become two very different men. And that realization led me to a question I wasn't expecting to ask. Can friendship survive becoming something else entirely? Not long ago, my friend from San Antonio and I found ourselves talking about that very thing. After 3 years of phone calls, texts, messages, jokes, and conversations, the topic eventually came up. What would happen if we actually met? Not online, not through Facebook, not through a phone call. What would happen if one of us got on an airplane and spent a few days with the other? It's a fair question. After all, we've spent years getting to know one another. We've celebrated victories together. We've shared disappointments. We've encouraged each other. We've laughed together. Sometimes it feels like we've known each other our entire lives. And naturally, the conversation drifted towards something bigger. Can friendships between a man and a woman become something more? Of course they can. People do it all the time. In fact, some of the strongest marriages and partnerships probably started as friendships. But then I found myself asking a different question. Should they? Now, before anybody listening starts yelling at their radio or phone or speaker, I'm not saying friendships can't become successful relationships. Clearly they can. What I'm talking about is something more personal, something I've noticed about myself. Whenever I think about a friendship becoming something more, my mind immediately jumps to what might be lost, not what might be gained. what might be lost. Because the moment friendships become romance, the rules change, the expectations change, the responsibilities change, the entire dynamic changes. And maybe that's where my hesitation comes from. I asked my friend a simple question. How many of your past relationships ended with both people remaining close friends afterward? We laughed because we both knew the answer. People often say they're going to stay friends. Sometimes they do, but most times they don't, or at least not in the same way. Something changes, even when people remain civil, even when there isn't any bitterness. The friendship that existed before the relationship is rarely the same friendship that exists after it. There have actually been friendships in my life where the conversation has gone a little further than just that. What if we dated? We've talked about whether two people who genuinely like each other, trust each other, and are attracted to each other could remain friends while adding something physical to the relationship. What people sometimes call friends with benefits. And I understand the appeal. You already know each other. You already trust each other. There's affection. There's attraction. And in theory, you skip a lot of the complications that come with traditional dating. But whenever the conversation has come up, I always find myself asking the same question. I'm not worried about what happens if it works. I'm worried about what happens to the friendship if it doesn't. Because once you cross that line, you can't always uncross it. Feelings change, expectations change, jealousy can show up where nobody expected it. One person may become more emotionally invested than the other, and suddenly the friendship you were trying to add something to becomes the very thing you put at risk. People call it friends with benefits, like the friendship is guaranteed to survive the benefits. I'm not convinced of this. Now, does that mean two friends should never take the chance? No. Sometimes the risk may be worth it. Sometimes something beautiful may come of it. But I think both people need to understand exactly what they're gambling with. Because sometimes the most valuable thing on the table isn't the possibility of becoming lovers. It's the friendship you already have. That got me thinking about another friend of mine. A wonderful woman who lives right here near me. Someone I originally met through Facebook. Someone who has supported me, encouraged me, and been a big supporter of this podcast from the very beginning. We've met for coffee. We've spent a lot of social media time together. And if I'm being honest, I like just about everything about her. Then there's another friend who lives in Colorado. Kind, thoughtful, the kind of person who makes you smile every time you hear from them. We've talked about maybe someday meeting. Maybe I'll visit Colorado. It's a place I've never been to before. But whenever those thoughts enter my mind, I seem to arrive at the same place. The friendship would change. Maybe for the better, probably for the worse, but it would change. And that's what fascinates me, because I genuinely enjoy these friendships exactly as they are. They're comfortable, they're honest, they're uncomplicated. There's no pressure to become something we're not. No obligation to change what already works. Just two people who enjoy having each other in their lives. So maybe the real question isn't whether friendships can become relationships. We already know they can. Maybe the question is why I seem so protective of the friendships I already have. Am I protecting them because they're valuable? Or am I protecting them because somewhere along the way, I've become afraid of commitment? Honestly, I don't know. Maybe it's because I'm older now. Maybe it's because I've lived through enough relationships to understand that every relationship comes with a cost. Maybe it's because friendships feel safe. Or maybe it's because I finally understand something I didn't understand when I was younger. Sometimes what we already have is worth protecting. Whatever the answer is, I know this much. Friendship and romance may begin in the same place, but once they start traveling down different roads, they rarely remain the same. And that got me thinking about another question. Not what kind of friends I have, but what kind of friend am I? I've been single for a few years now. I live alone, and truthfully, I'm comfortable in my own skin and with the man who stares back at me from the mirror every morning. Do I sometimes miss being in a relationship? Absolutely. I think most people do. There are moments when it would be nice to have someone sitting across from you at dinner, someone to travel with, someone to tell about your day before you go to sleep. But somewhere along the way, I learned something important. Being alone and being lonely are not necessarily the same thing. And that's where friendship comes into the picture. For me, friendship isn't about having someone to complain to. It isn't about having someone to carry my burdens. It's about knowing there are people in this world who care whether I show up tomorrow. People I can call, people I can text, people who will answer. And maybe more importantly, people whose lives I'm grateful to be a part of. The truth is, over the past few months, I've been dealing with some physical pain. Nothing life-ending, nothing dramatic like that. Just enough to remind me that getting older isn't always for the faint of heart. And yet, most of my friends don't even know about it. Maybe that's something I still have work to do on. Because being a good friend isn't only about being there for other people. Sometimes it means trusting them enough to let them be there for you. Not because I'm hiding it, but because when I call my friends, I don't want every conversation to be about me. I don't call to complain. I call them to laugh. I call them to share something funny. I call them because I don't want every conversation to revolve around what I'm going through. Maybe that's just who I've become. For a while, my childhood friend and I laughed about the good old days. My friend in San Antonio and I shared jokes, stories, and those occasional what-if conversations that probably aren't going anywhere, but still are fun to have. My friend here in North Carolina has been one of the biggest supporters of this podcast journey. Since day one, she's encouraged me, listened to me, and cheered me on. Sometimes I find myself simply wanting to thank her for believing in me when this whole thing was just a crazy idea. And then there's my friend in Colorado. Every now and then she'll post a selfie online and I'll remind her how beautiful she is. Not because she needs me to, not because I'm trying to gain anything from it, but because kindness costs so little and can mean so much. As I've gotten older, I've started to realize something. I genuinely enjoy making people smile. Sometimes a compliment, a phone call, or a simple, "I was thinking about you," can change somebody's entire day, and you may never even know it. My mother once told me, "Victor, it doesn't cost you anything to be nice." And she was right. I enjoy encouraging people. I enjoy reminding people that they're important. I enjoy reminding people that somebody is thinking about them. Maybe that's selfish in a strange way, because sometimes I feel like I get more joy from giving encouragement than I receive from getting it. Maybe that's why these friendships mean so much to me. Not because they solve my problems, not because they fill some giant void in my life, but because they remind me that human connection still matters. And maybe that's what friendship really is. Not finding people who make life perfect, just finding people who make it a little brighter. Which brings me to another thought. If friendships are built on connection, then every friendship is built on something else too. Trust. And trust is a funny thing. Every one of us enters this world trusting. A baby trusts its mother. A child trusts its parents. Kids trust each other. They trust the kid next door. They trust the kid they just met on the playground. Somewhere along the way, though, life starts teaching us lessons. Sometimes painful ones. We get lied to, we get disappointed, we get betrayed, sometimes by strangers, sometimes by people we trusted the most. And every time it happens, a little voice begins to whisper in our ear, be careful, don't trust too much, don't get too close, don't let people in. I think all of us have heard that voice at one time or another. I know I have. I've been hurt, you've been hurt, everybody listening to this podcast has been hurt. It's part of being human. The question isn't whether we're going to get hurt. The question is what we do afterward. Do we build walls? Do we stop trusting? Do we stop making friends? Do we decide people aren't worth the trouble? I've known people who live that way. People who proudly tell you they don't need anybody. People who say their only friend is money in their pocket. People who trust nobody. And honestly, part of me understands it. If you've been hurt enough times, self-protection starts to look like wisdom. For a period of my life, I carried a bit of that lone wolf mentality myself. I handled my own problems. I took care of my responsibilities. I didn't ask for much, if anything. And I convinced myself that that was strength. Maybe sometimes it was. But the older I've gotten, the more I've started questioning that way of thinking. Because there's a difference between being independent and refusing to let anybody get close to you. Independence can be strength. Isolation can be a prison. And sometimes we build those prisons one disappointment at a time. And yes, sometimes that trust gets broken. That's the risk. But the alternative is something else entirely. Isolation. And while isolation may protect us from being hurt, it also protects us from being loved. It protects us from friendship. It protects us from connection. It protects us from belonging. One of the things I've learned as I've gotten older is that I don't like starting friendships with suspicion. I don't Google people. I don't investigate every detail of their past. I don't assume the worst. That doesn't mean I'm naive. It doesn't mean I'm careless. It simply means I want to give people the opportunity to show me who they are, good or bad, because eventually they will. People always do. And when people show me who they are, I try to believe them, whether I like what I see or not. And if they turn out to be good people, then something beautiful can happen. A friendship can grow, a relationship can grow, a connection can form. And if they turn out to not to be who I thought they were, well, that's part of life too. I'd rather take the risk than spend the rest of my life hiding behind walls. Maybe that's why I still make friends. Maybe that's why I still leave the door open for people. Not because I believe nobody will ever hurt me again, but because I believe some people are worth the risk. And that realization led me to another question. What if friendship isn't something we learn? What if it's something we're born needing? As I thought about that question, I found myself thinking about my family. Because up until this point, I've been talking mostly about friends, people I've met through Facebook, people I've known since childhood, people who came into my life through work or chance encounters. But what about family? Can family members be friends? I think they can. In fact, some of the best friendship in our lives may have been sitting inside our families all along. Take my niece Serena, for example. I talk to her almost every day. Not because I have to, not because we're related, but because I enjoy talking to her. We laugh, we share ideas, we talk about life. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we don't. But through the years, she's become more than just my niece. She's become one of my closest friends. And I think that's one of the things I value most about getting older. Realizing that some of the people I was connected to by family became people I would have chosen anyway. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized that friendship has very little to do with titles. Friendship isn't about whether someone is your cousin, your brother, your sister, your niece, or even your child. Friendship is about connection. It's about trust, respect, shared experiences. It's about enjoying someone's company. It's about knowing you can call them, and it's about knowing they'll answer. My daughter is another example. She's my daughter first. That will never change. But over the years, as she's grown into adulthood, our relationship has changed too. The parent-child relationship is still there, but now there's friendship mixed in as well. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about getting older. Some relationships evolve, they deepen, they become something richer than they once were. Now, not every family relationship works that way. Let's be honest. We've all met relatives we wouldn't spend 10 minutes with if we weren't related to them. Just because someone shares your DNA doesn't automatically make them your friend. And that's okay. Because friendship isn't something you're entitled to. It's something that's earned, something that's built, something that's nurtured over time. Maybe that's why family friendships are so special. Because they combine two things: the connection we're born into and the connection we choose. We don't get to choose our family. But every now and then, we're lucky enough to discover that we'd probably choose the same one anyway. And maybe that's one of the greatest compliments we can give another person. Not that they're family, but that even if they weren't family, we'd still want them in our lives. Which brings me back to a question I've been asking throughout this entire episode. Why do friendships matter so much in the first place? Why do we spend so much of our lives searching for connection, searching for belonging, searching for people who understand us? Maybe the answer has been with us since the very beginning. Think about it. Every human being enters this world completely dependent on somebody else. A newborn baby can't feed itself, can't protect itself, can't survive on its own. From the moment we're born, we depend on other people. Usually a parent, sometimes two, sometimes grandparents, family, caregivers, people willing to teach us about the world, people willing to love us long before we've done anything to earn it. And unfortunately, not everyone starts life that way. Some children lose parents, some are abandoned, some grow up in homes where trust is broken before it ever had a chance to develop. And sometimes those early experiences shape the way people see relationships for the rest of their lives. It can make trusting people difficult. It can make friendship difficult. It can make love difficult. And honestly, who can blame them? If life teaches you early that people leave, people lie, or people disappoint, it makes sense that you'd be cautious, even suspicious, maybe even isolated. I've known people who probably say, I don't need anybody. My only friend is the money in my pocket. And while part of me understands that mindset, another part of me always questions it. Because if human beings were truly meant to be alone, why do we spend so much of our lives searching for connection? Why do we seek out friendship? Why do we look for love? Why do we celebrate together? Why do we grieve together? Why do we call somebody when we receive good news? And why do we call somebody when life falls apart? Because most of us don't just want to experience life. We want somebody to witness it with us. The answer seems obvious, because deep down, we're social creatures. Long before there were cities, long before there were countries, long before there was Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, or podcast, human beings survived because they stayed together. Families, tribes, villages, communities, people helping one another, people watching each other's backs, people sharing what they had, and people making sure nobody faced life completely alone. Like I said earlier, For a long time, I carried a bit of that lone wolf mentality. I handled my problems. I took care of my responsibilities. I didn't ask much from anybody. And for a while, I thought that was enough. But the older I've gotten, the more I've come to appreciate connection. Not dependence, connection. There's a difference. I'm not talking about needing someone to solve my problems. I'm talking about knowing somebody cares how things turn out for me. Knowing somebody is rooting for me. Knowing somebody is happy when good things happen in my life. And maybe, most importantly, knowing somebody notices when I'm gone. I think that's what friendship gives us. Not perfection, not security, not guarantees, just connection. The simple comfort of knowing we're not walking through life entirely alone. And maybe that's why friendships matter so much. Maybe that's why losing them hurts. Maybe that's why reconnecting with an old friend feels so good. And maybe that's why making a new friend feels exciting, even when you're 50 years old. Because somewhere deep inside, we're still those kids on the playground looking for someone to say, "Hey, wanna play?" And that got me thinking about something else. If friendships are so important, why do some of them last a lifetime while others almost disappear without us noticing? I wish there were one simple answer. Sometimes people move. Sometimes they get married. They have children. Careers change. Priorities change. Life gets busy. And one day you realize somebody you once talked to every day has become somebody you haven't spoken to in years. Nobody did anything wrong. Nobody had an argument. Nobody woke up one morning and decided they didn't want to be friends anymore. Life simply happened. Maybe that friendship belonged to a particular chapter in your life. Maybe that person was exactly who you needed at 16 or 25 or 40. And maybe the fact that they're no longer part of your everyday life doesn't erase what the friendship once meant. But sometimes friendships don't fade. Sometimes they reach a crossroad. Remember the childhood friend I told you about earlier? The one I reconnected with on Facebook after not seeing or speaking to him for decades? Well, something happened recently that changed the way I look at that friendship. And in a strange way, it happened while I was working on this very episode. If you happen to listen to Season 1, Episode 4, titled Hurricane Andrew, When Survival Becomes the Urge, you already know part of this story. But there was a piece of that story I didn't spend much time talking about. Back in the early 90s, I was living in New York. I was dating Evie. She had 2 small children. And the 2 of us had started talking about seriously leaving New York City and trying to build a different life somewhere else. My childhood friend had moved to Florida with his family years earlier. We stayed in touch. And during one of our conversations, he suggested that we come down to Florida. He told me he would help us. He'd meet us when we arrived, give us somewhere to stay, help us get established, give us a chance to plant some seeds so maybe we could start growing some roots of our own down in Florida. We trusted him. Evie flew down first, by herself. Think about that for a second. She was trusting a man she had only been dating for a few months with her 2 small children, getting on an airplane and flying to a city she had never been to before. That had to be terrifying. But she did it. She landed at Miami International Airport and waited for us. She didn't even get a hotel room. She stayed at the airport overnight. The following day, I got on a plane with her 2 children and flew down to meet her. The plan was simple. My friend was supposed to pick us up that evening. So we waited. Evening came. No friend. We waited some more. Nothing. And remember, this was the early 90s. There were no smartphones, sitting in my pocket, no text messages, no location sharing, no way to see if anybody had read your message. I kept calling his home phone. Nothing. We waited and waited. Eventually that first night passed, then another. There we were. 2 adults, 2 small children, very little money, no place to go. Sleeping on the floor of Miami International Airport. The person who had promised to meet us never showed up. And at the time, I had absolutely no idea why. Finally, an airport employee noticed us. They realized something wasn't right and asked if we needed help. We did. They helped connect us with a family shelter in Dade County. And that shelter on Northwest 2nd Avenue in Miami became our home. And if you heard that episode last season, then you already know what happened next. Hurricane Andrew showed up. Now, I was angry with my friend. Of course I was. But life has a funny way of forcing you to deal with whatever is standing directly in front of you. I had Evie. I had 2 small children depending on us. We had no home, no money, no safety net. And eventually, we had a hurricane coming. Being angry at my friend wasn't going to solve any of those problems. So I moved on. We moved on. Life moved on. And somewhere along the way, I forgave him. Not because he apologized. Honestly, I don't remember there ever being some grand apology. I forgave him because carrying that anger for the rest of my life wasn't going to change what happened. Decades passed. Then Facebook did what Facebook sometimes does. It brought somebody from my past back into my present. Friend request, accepted, and suddenly, there we were again. 2 kids from Queens who had somehow become grown men. For the past few months, we talked almost every day, sometimes several times a day. We laughed, we talked about the people we grew up with, we talked about New York, we talked about life. And for a while, I thought maybe this was one of those friendships that had somehow survived all those years. But the more we talked, the more I started noticing something. I had changed, he hadn't. At least not in the ways that mattered to me. And little by little, I started creating some distance. Then recently we had a conversation. And during that conversation, he decided to point out some of my faults, past and present. Now listen, I have faults, plenty of them. You don't have to investigate very hard to find them. And if you're my friend and you think I'm wrong about something, tell me. I can take it. At least most days. But during that conversation, something finally made me bring up Miami, the airport, Evie, those 2 little kids, and the promise he had made all those years ago. Except now, according to him, that wasn't exactly what happened. He denied it. He tried changing the story. He wanted proof. And when I gave him the proof he asked for, that still wasn't enough. What he really seemed to want was for me to agree with a different version of what happened, and I couldn't do that. I had forgiven him. I had moved on. I wasn't asking for an apology all these years later. I wasn't trying to punish him. I wasn't even angry anymore. But there was one thing I wasn't willing to do. I wasn't willing to rewrite history so he wouldn't have to feel uncomfortable about it. Those are 2 very different things. Forgiveness doesn't mean something never happened. Moving forward doesn't require pretending the past doesn't exist. And friendship doesn't mean I have to lie to you simply because the truth makes you uncomfortable. I told him that as far as I was concerned, what happened all those years ago was over. I had gotten past it. I had forgiven it. And maybe it was time for him to do the same. He didn't see it that way. So finally, I told him something very simple. I said, look, you've got 2 choices. You can get over it, or you could get gone. There was a pause. And then he said, get gone. I said, okay, later. And that was it. I ended the call. I blocked him. And when he tried reaching me through social media and through people we had known together over the years, I eventually closed those doors too. Not because I hated him. I don't. Not because I forgot the good memories we shared growing up. I haven't. And not because I wanted revenge for something that happened more than 30 years ago. I didn't. I had already forgiven that. But maybe forgiveness and friendship aren't the same thing. Maybe you can forgive somebody and still realize you no longer belong in each other's lives. Maybe you can appreciate who somebody was to you without giving them permanent access to who you are today. And maybe a friendship doesn't have to end in hatred for it to end. Sometimes people simply reach a crossroad. One person goes one way, the other goes another. For years, I thought history was enough to keep certain friendships alive. We grew up together. We went through things together. We had stories nobody else could understand. But maybe history isn't enough. Maybe knowing somebody 40 or 50 years doesn't automatically make the friendship healthy. Longevity can tell you how long somebody has been in your life. It doesn't automatically tell you whether they still belong there. Because friendships can't survive on memories alone. It needs something in the present. Trust, respect, honesty, accountability, and maybe the willingness to allow each other to grow. So maybe the better question isn't why some friendships end. Maybe the better question is, what makes the good ones last? I've been thinking about that a lot. And I don't think it's one thing. I think it's a collection of little things that, over time, become something much bigger. Trust, honesty, respect, loyalty, patience, humor, the ability to listen, the ability to disagree, the ability to tell somebody the truth even when the truth isn't exactly what they want to hear. And maybe most importantly, the ability to still be happy for somebody when their life starts moving in a different direction from yours. I think that matters. Because friendship isn't supposed to be a competition. Your success doesn't diminish mine. Your happiness doesn't take anything away from me. Your good news shouldn't make me feel threatened. A real friend should be able to celebrate your wins without secretly keeping score. And I think the same thing is true when life gets difficult. A good friend doesn't always have to know what to say. Sometimes they just have to be there. Sometimes friendship is picking up the phone. Sometimes it's answering a text. Sometimes it's sitting quietly while somebody talks. Sometimes it's saying, I don't know how to fix this, but I'm here. That may sound simple, but as we get older, I think we start understanding how valuable simple things really are. Presence matters. Consistency matters. Knowing somebody is there matters. And here's another thing I've learned. A true friend doesn't have to agree with you all the time. In fact, I don't think I'd want a friend who did. If every single thing I say is brilliant, if every decision I make is perfect, if every opinion I have is correct, then either I've achieved some level of enlightenment nobody told me about, or my friends aren't being honest with me. Sometimes friendship means saying, Victor, I love you, but you're wrong. Sometimes it means, yo, Vic, you need to think about this again. Sometimes it even means, that wasn't your finest moment, bro. And yes, sometimes it means hearing something you really don't want to hear. But there's a difference between honesty and cruelty. A good friend can tell you the truth without trying to tear you down. They don't embarrass you for sport. They don't weaponize your weakness. They don't collect your mistakes and save them for the next argument. They tell you the truth because they care about you. And just as importantly, they allow you to tell them the truth too. That's where respect comes in. Because friendship without respect eventually becomes something else. Control, competition, resentment, convenience, whatever you want to call it. But it isn't friendship. I also think good friendships allow room for change. That one may be important than I realized when I was younger. People evolve, hopefully. What mattered to me at 20 doesn't necessarily matter to me now. The person I was at 30 isn't the person I am today. My priorities have changed. My beliefs change. My goals have changed. My tolerance for certain things have changed. And a healthy friendship has to make room for that. It can't demand that I remain the person that I was when we first met, just because that version of me was more familiar. A good friend doesn't say, "You've changed," like it's an accusation. A good friend says, "I see where you're going, and maybe even I'm proud of you." That doesn't mean every friendship grows in the same direction. Sometimes people grow apart. We've already talked about that. But the friendships that seem to last are usually the ones where both people are given permission to grow without feeling like they're betraying the past. And then there's effort. I think we underestimate effort. We like to believe great friendships just happen naturally. Sometimes they do. But keeping them alive takes something. A phone call, a text, remembering a birthday, checking in, sending somebody a ridiculous video because you know it'll make them laugh. Making time, especially as we get older, because adulthood will eat every free minute you have if you let it. Work, family, bills, appointments, responsibilities. Before you know it, 6 months have gone by and you're saying to yourself, "Man, I've been meaning to call you." I've done it, especially with my friend Jerry and Charlotte. We've all done it. And sometimes the difference between a friendship that lasts and one that disappears is simply whether somebody finally makes that call. At my new job, my boss has this little habit I've come to really like. Every time she sees me, she says, "Hi, friend." If I walk into her office, "Hey, friend." If she comes into my work area, "Hi, friend." Now, we're not actually friends in the traditional sense. She's my boss. But there's something about the way she says it. It's warm, it's welcoming, and maybe that says something about the word itself. Sometimes friendships begin long before two people ever officially call themselves friends. Sometimes it starts with simply making another person feel welcome. But I also think real friendships has a certain kind of freedom to it. You don't always have to perform. You don't always have to be entertaining. You don't always have to have the right answer. You can just be yourself. That may be the rarest thing we give each other. Permission to be exactly who we are. Not who we're supposed to be, not who social media says we should be, not who our jobs require us to be. Just ourselves. Flawed, funny, complicated, sometimes tired, sometimes confused, sometimes absolutely convinced we know what we're doing when we clearly don't, and still accept it. Maybe that's why certain friendships feel almost effortless, even after years apart. You can go months without talking. Then the phone rings, and within 30 seconds, you're right back where you had left off. No guilt, no scorekeeping, no, "Well, I guess you finally remembered I exist." It's just, "Hey, what's going on?" And somehow, that's enough. The older I get, the more I think friendship isn't really about frequency. It's about reliability. It's about how often somebody is present. It's about whether they're present when it matters. It isn't about agreeing on everything. It's about respecting each other when you don't. It isn't about never disappointing one another. Eventually we will. It's about what happens afterward. Do we talk? Do we listen? Do we own our part? Do we forgive? Do we learn? And do we grow? Because maybe that's what separates a friendship with history from a friendship with a future. History tells us where we've been. Trust tells us whether we can keep going. And when I think about people I consider my real friends today, I realize they don't all look the same. Some live nearby, like my friend Philly in Raleigh. Some live 100 miles away, like my friend Eddie down in South Carolina. Some I've known for years, like Nilsa down in San Antonio, Texas, the friend who helped inspire this episode. And some came into my life much later, like Marta. Some are family, my niece Serena. Some I've never even sat in the same room with, like Alicia in Colorado. But they all seem to have something in common. I can be myself around them. And maybe that's one of the clearest signs of friendship there is. You don't feel like you have to audition for your place in somebody's life. I trust them. I respect them. I enjoy having them in my life. And I hope they can say the same thing about me. Maybe that's the real test. Not how many friends you have, not how many names are sitting in your phone, not how many people follow you online, but how many people in your life can you honestly say, I'm glad you're here? And how many of them would say the same thing about you? Because in the end, maybe friendship is less about finding people who fit perfectly into our lives and more about recognizing the people who make the journey better simply because they're walking part of it with us. I heard something a long time ago that has stuck with me over the years. To have a friend, you have to be a friend. Simple sentence, but so true. Every once in a while, it makes me stop and ask myself a question. Am I being a good friend? Do I have good friends? Do people care about me? Am I being a good friend? Because friendship works both ways. And I think sometimes we forget that. It's easy to think about the people who haven't called us, the people who haven't checked in, the people who haven't asked how we're doing. But every now and then, I have to turn that around and ask, when was the last time I called them? When was the last time I checked in? When was the last time I asked how they were doing and actually waited long enough to hear the answer? And that doesn't apply only to friends. It applies to family too. I have 2 sisters, and every once in a while I have to remind myself of something very basic. Call your sisters. Text them. Check on them. Not because I think something is wrong. Sometimes for the exact opposite reason. Because I assume everything is fine. And that's something I've had to learn. What I think is one thing, what actually is going on in somebody else's life can be something completely different. We see the Facebook post, the smiling picture, the vacation photo, the birthday dinner, the new job, grandkids, and we think, they're doing good. Maybe they are. Hopefully they are. But maybe they had a terrible week. Maybe they're worried about something. Maybe they're carrying something they haven't told anybody about. Maybe they don't need advice. Maybe they don't need money. Maybe they don't need anybody to fix anything. Maybe they just need somebody to call and say, hey, I was thinking about you. How are you? And then actually mean it. And sometimes that little check-in may mean more than we'll ever know. I think the last part matters because we've all asked somebody, how you doing? While we're already halfway out the door. We say it because it's polite. It's become almost automatic. How are you? Good? Good. And everybody keeps it pushing. But friendship sometimes requires us to stop moving, to listen, to pay attention, to notice when I'm fine doesn't sound very fine. And maybe ask again, no, seriously, how are you doing? I think being a good friend sometimes means making room for somebody else's life, not just waiting for our turn to talk. That's something I have to watch in myself too, because we all have stories, we all have experiences, and sometimes somebody starts telling us what they're going through, and within 30 seconds we're saying, oh, you think that's bad? Let me tell you what happened to me. I've probably done it. Most of us probably have. And sometimes sharing our own experience is helpful. It lets the other person know they're not alone. But other times, maybe they don't need my story. Maybe they just need me to listen to theirs. That's part of being a friend too. Knowing when to talk and knowing when to listen. Knowing when somebody wants advice and knowing when they simply want somebody besides them while they figure it out for themselves. I also think being a good friend means learning how to celebrate somebody else. Really celebrate them. Not congratulate them while they're quietly comparing their lives to yours. Not say, I'm happy for you, while secretly wondering when it's going to be my turn. That can be difficult. We're human. We compare ourselves. But if somebody I care about gets the job, buys the house, falls in love, starts a business, finishes the degree, becomes a parent, gets healthy, or finally does a thing that they've been talking about doing for years, I want to be able to say, man, I'm proud of you. Or you go, girl, and mean it. Because friendships shouldn't require one person to stay small so the other person can feel big. And being a good friend also means knowing when you owe somebody an apology. That one isn't always easy either. Sometimes we hurt people, sometimes intentionally, usually not. We say the wrong thing. We forget something important. We don't show up. We make assumptions. We get defensive. And sometimes the hardest words in a friendship are also the simplest. I was wrong. I'm sorry. You didn't deserve that. No explanation. No, I'm sorry, but no speech about what they did first. Just ownership. Sometimes I was wrong can save a friendship that pride would have destroyed. Maybe that's another part of friendship we don't talk enough about. Accountability isn't only something we should expect from other people. It's something they should be able to expect from us. And then there are boundaries. Being a good friend doesn't mean saying yes to everything. It doesn't mean answering every phone call. It doesn't mean allowing someone to disrespect you because you've known them for 20 years. And it doesn't mean solving everybody's problems. Sometimes the healthiest thing you can say to somebody you care about is, I love you, but I can't do that. Or, I'm here for you, but I can't carry this for you. There's a difference between supporting somebody and being consumed by them. And I think mature friendships learn the difference. A boundary doesn't always mean I care less. Sometimes it means I finally understand how to care without losing myself. But maybe one of the simplest ways we can become better friends is also the easiest. Tell people what they mean to you while you still can. We have this strange habit as human beings of waiting until somebody is gone before we say all the beautiful things we should have said while they were here with us. Then we stand in a room somewhere telling everybody, he was such a good friend. She always made me laugh. He was always there for me. She meant so much to me. And I sometimes wonder, did we tell them? Did they know? I don't want the people I care about to have to guess. If I appreciate you, I should tell you. If I'm proud of you, I should tell you. If you made my life better, I should tell you. If I love you, I should tell you. Not someday, now. Because none of us know how much time we have. And I don't say that to be depressing. I say it because maybe knowing that we should make us more intentional. Call your friend. Check on your brother. Text your sister. Have lunch with somebody you haven't seen in a while. Tell somebody, I appreciate you. Not because anything is wrong, because something is right. They're still here. You're still here. And you still have the opportunity to say it. Maybe being a better friend isn't about making some enormous change in who we are. Maybe it's just paying a little more attention, listening a little longer, calling a little more often, judging a little less quickly, and apologizing when we're wrong, celebrating when they win, showing up when life gets hard, and reminding the people we care about that they matter. Because I heard it said a long time ago, to have a friend, you have to be a friend. And maybe before we ask whether the people in our lives are being good friends to us, every once in a while, we should be willing to ask ourselves the harder question. Am I being a good friend to them? That may be the question I want you to carry with you. Because when I started thinking about this episode, I thought I was going to talk about friendship. The people we meet, the people we lose, the people who stay, the people who change, the people who come back into our lives after years apart. But somewhere along the way, the question changed. It became less about who are my friends and more about what does friendship actually ask of us. Maybe friendship asks us to be present. Maybe it asks us to be honest. Maybe it asks us to forgive. Maybe it asks us to grow. And maybe it asks us to let people go when the relationship has reached its end. Maybe every once in a while, it simply asks us to make the first move. Which brings me back to where we started. The playground, or the schoolyard, the kid down the block, the handball court, the basketball court. That first awkward moment when one kid looked at another kid and said, "Hey, want to play?" That was it. No resume, no background check, no political discussion, no complicated expectations. Just an invitation. Do you want to share this moment with me? Maybe we never really stop asking that question. We just change the words. When we're adult, it sounds more like, want to grab some coffee? Want something to eat? Want to catch the game? Need anything? You good? Call me when you get home. I was thinking about you. Or maybe just, hey, I haven't heard from you in a minute. Different words, same invitation. Do you want to share a little bit of this life with me? And when you really think about it, maybe that's all friendships have ever been. People deciding consciously or unconsciously that life is just a little better when the other person is a part of it. Not perfect, not permanent, not guaranteed, just better. Some friends will walk with us for decades, some for a few years, some for only a season. Some will become family. Some family members will become friends. Some friendships will survive distance. Some will survive disagreement. Some will survive long periods of silence. And some won't survive at all. That doesn't necessarily mean they failed. I think that's something I understand now that I didn't understand when I was younger. A friendship doesn't have to last forever to have mattered. Length doesn't determine meaning. Somebody can come into your life, change you, teach you something, make you laugh, help you through a difficult season, and eventually move on. That doesn't erase what they gave you. It doesn't erase what you gave them. Sometimes we judge relationships by how they ended. Maybe we should also remember what they were while they were good. The laughs, the conversations, the stupid things we did, the trips, the late night phone calls, advice we probably should have taken, the advice we definitely should not have taken, the moments when somebody showed up, the moment when somebody simply sat beside us. That matters. And then there are people who are still here. Those may be the people we sometimes take for granted because familiarity has a funny way of making valuable things feel ordinary. We assume they'll always answer. We assume they'll always be around. We assume they will always be another phone call, another visit, another birthday, another Christmas, another chance to say, thank you, I appreciate you, I'm proud of you, I love you. But life doesn't make promises like that. So maybe tonight, when this episode is over, don't think about every person you've ever known. Just think about a few. Think about the person who can make you laugh when you really don't feel like laughing. Think about the person who tells you the truth. Think about the person who checks on you. Think about the person you can call at 2 in the morning. Think about the person who hasn't heard from you in a while. And maybe think about someone who was once a big part of your life, but isn't anymore. Maybe there's anger there. Maybe there isn't. Maybe there's regret. Maybe there's peace. Maybe you simply grew apart. Whatever the case may be, maybe you can appreciate what that friendship was without needing it to become something again. And if there's somebody you've had to let go, that's okay too. Forgiveness doesn't always mean reconciliation. Sometimes forgiveness means stop carrying the anger. Sometimes it means you wish somebody well from a distance. Sometimes it means accepting the friendship had its time, its purpose, its place in your life, and then it ended. That doesn't make you unfriendly. It makes you human. I think about my own friendships differently now. The ones nearby, the ones hundreds of miles away, the ones that started when I was young, and the ones that showed up later in life. The ones connected by blood, the ones connected by nothing more than a phone call, a message, a laugh, or a shared understanding. And I've realized something. I don't need 100 people around me. I don't need everybody to understand me. I don't need everybody to like me. I just want good people in my life. People I can trust. People that I can laugh with. People who can tell me when I'm wrong. People who can celebrate when something good happens for me. People who allow me to be myself. And people who know I'll try to give them the same in return. Maybe that's enough. Actually, maybe that's more than enough. Because when we're children, friendship was easy. We didn't understand everything that came with it. Trust, loyalty, honesty, forgiveness, boundaries, accountability, loss, growth. We learned all of that later. Back then, we only understood one thing. Life was more fun when we had somebody to share it with. And maybe underneath all the complications of adulthood, that part hasn't changed at all. Maybe growing older doesn't mean we stop needing friendship. Maybe we just get better at understanding what it costs, what it gives, and what it's worth. Maybe somewhere inside, every one of us is still that kid standing on the playground, holding a basketball or a pink Spalding handball, looking around at all the people we haven't met yet, hoping someone will look back at us. And maybe, if we're lucky, one of them will still have enough courage to say, "Hey, you want to play?" And one more thing. If you're listening to this and you feel like you could use a new friend, or maybe you just need somebody to talk to every now and then, I want you to know the door is open. Maybe we never meet in person. Maybe our friendship starts with an email, direct message, a comment, a conversation through this show. That's okay. Some of the friendships I value most started exactly that way. So if you ever wanted to reach out, you can email me at hello@neverhaveihadtheurge.com or send me a message through any of the show's social media pages. Say hello. Tell me your story. Tell me what you thought about the episode. Tell me what's going on in your life. I can't promise I'll have all the answers. Actually, I pretty much guarantee I won't. But I'll do my best to listen. And maybe sometimes that's how friendships begin. And hey, if you enjoyed this episode and you want to be a friend to me and to this little show we're building together, leave a comment, send a message, or if you listen on Apple Podcasts, leave a rating or review. It doesn't have to be long. Tell me what you think. Tell me what made you laugh, or tell me what you'd like to hear us talk about next. I read that stuff. It means a lot to me personally, And it also helps other people discover, never have I had the urge. Maybe somebody out there is looking for a new show. Maybe they're looking for a conversation. Maybe they're looking for a place where they feel like somebody is talking with them instead of at them. And maybe, just maybe, they're looking for a friend too. Hey, thank you for spending this time with me. This has been Never Have I Had the Urge. I'm Victor Jimenez, your host. And until next time, be good to the people who are good to you. And every once in a while, be brave enough to ask someone, hey, wanna play?